Hi, everyone. Thanks for attending my talk. My name is Weiwu. I'm a PhD student coming from USC. Today, I want to talk about CloudCluster, an approach that extracts the functional structure of a cloud service. This work was done with collaboration with Sourav, Jehangir, Christophe, and my advisor, Ramesh. Today, cloud providers struggle to provide customers with insight on the performance and the reliability of a cloud service. To understand why, I need to explain to you how cloud services work. Cloud customers organize their services into projects. For example, an ad-supported social media platform can have different projects for their front end, ad system, and the analytic backend. Each project contains a number of virtual machines, or VMs. Some projects can be large, spanning tens of thousands of VMs. This description is specific to Google Cloud Platform, but other cloud providers have similar offerings. Cloud providers host computer resources at multiple locations in the worldwide. Google's cloud infrastructure is divided into regions and zones. Usually, a region represents a part of a continent, and zones represent the geographical area within a region. Customer can specify which region and zone to place a VM. To ensure customers' privacy, there is a limited visibility across the customer and the provider's boundary. The provider only knows where the VMs are and the VM name. If the customer enables the traffic logging, the provider might also know the volume of the VM-to-VM traffic matrix. Customer knows the location of the region and zones, and they know some information about the interconnected network. In this case, no one actually has a complete view of the entire cloud service. This limited visibility makes it hard to answer questions about provisioning, traffic dynamic, and the cost of the cloud services. Today, providers allow customers to monitor their services at different levels of abstraction. Customers can monitor the CPU, memory, and network statistics of each VM. They can observe the cloud project at a zone or region granularity, and at the level of access to other cloud services like storage. In this talk, I will describe a new abstraction called functional structure, which can help provider to answer customers' question that we mentioned in the previous slide. Let's take a simple project to understand what is the functional structure. The architecture of this project contains two layers, a load balancing layer and a processing layer. The actual deployment of the service contains VMs in the west and in the east. Within each region, the load balancer will direct traffic to the processing VM. The load balancer might also decide to direct traffic to the other region when the local processing nodes are running at the full capacity. In this case, the functional structure will look like this. The functional structure is a communication graph of VMs grouped by the function and the location. The load balancer and the processing VMs in the west correspond to the two nodes on the left. This is the same on the right. The edge between the nodes represents the traffic between the VM groups. We believe that the functional structure captures two important design patterns in the cloud projects. First, we observe that often multiple VMs run the same piece of software in a project. This is caused by the techniques for scaled out, such as replication or sharding. Group by location captures the communication locality, which ensures low latency and low network cost. Cloud providers typically don't know the functional structure of a customer's project. In our work, we show that with customers' consent, you can extract the functional structure using the VM-to-VM traffic. To extract the functional structure, we firstly take the VM-to-VM traffic communication graph. Then we group the VMs by the function and the location information. With this information, we can get the functional structure. However, while the location information is known, the functional information is typically not known by the cloud provider. Thus, our central challenge is to determine if two VMs are functionally similar. Our hypothesis is that the traffic similarity implies functional similarity. To provide some intuition, let's consider a simple VM-to-VM traffic matrix that can be extracted from the traffic logs. Each row represents a VM sending out traffic, and each column represents the destination of the traffic. Each entry in the matrix represents the amount of traffic between the source and the destination VM. In this figure, entries with darker colors indicates less traffic, and brighter colors indicates more traffic. But just looking at the traffic matrix, we can see that some rows actually have similar traffic pattern. These two VMs are sending little traffic to two VMs and a large amount of traffic to other VMs. If we treat each row of the traffic matrix as a feature vector of its corresponding VM, then the VMs with similar traffic pattern will have a small feature distance. Using the distance metric, we can use clustering to find a functional grouping. In the previous example, VM 1 and 4 should fall into one group, and the remaining VMs will be in another group. In this paper, we developed an approach called CloudCluster, which performs clustering on the VM-to-VM traffic matrix. It overcomes several challenges. VM traffic volume can vary many orders of magnitudes. Cloud projects can have tens of thousands of VMs. The provider might not know the number of clusters. In this talk, I will describe how we overcome the second and the third challenge. To deal with the second challenge, we use dimensionality reduction techniques. Cloud projects can be large. The table on the right shows the size of projects we analyzed in the paper. You can see that the project can have a large number of VMs. This means that each VM can have a large feature vector. Distance measures on this sparse, high-dimensional data can be very noisy, which is usually known as the curse of dimensionality. Moreover, the computational capacity increases exponentially with the size of project. Our insight is that the VM-to-VM traffic matrix contains significant redundancy. This graph shows the singular value spectrum of one of our projects. Only about 10 to 20 singular values are significant, which indicates that the traffic matrix might have a low rank structure. To exploit this, we'll apply singular value decomposition to the original traffic matrix. This will give us a low rank approximation of the original traffic matrix. We then cluster on this low rank approximation. In addition to reducing the computational complexity, we have observed that this step reduces the noise in the traffic matrix. Another challenge is clustering itself. Providers don't know the number of clusters, so the k-means clustering cannot be used. Other techniques require domain knowledge or are computationally expensive. Instead, we adopt a method called agglomerative clustering. This is a bottom-up approach that recursively merge clusters. The result can be viewed as a dendrogram. In the dendrogram, each non-leaf node indicates a possible cluster, and each cluster can contain subclusters. The height of each node represents the feature distance between the subclusters. To generate clusters, we need to cut the dendrogram. If we cut the dendrogram at this distance threshold, we'll get 2 clusters. If we cut it lower, it will produce 4 clusters. It turns out there is a way to automatically determine where to cut the dendrogram. The distribution of how similar a cluster is to its subcluster is skewed, and we can cut the dendrogram at the knee of this skewed curve. To evaluate the clustering performance, we compare CloudCluster's result with projects with known VM functions. We use 2 standard measures of clustering metrics, homogeneity and completeness. Homogeneity measures how likely VMs within the same clusters are having the same label. Completeness measures how likely VMs with the same labels will fall into the same cluster. These metrics range from 0 to 1. Homogeneity and completeness score in clustering are analogous to precision and recall in the classification problem. A clustering result with both high homogeneity and high completeness score indicates that it's well matched to the ground truth. We found that CloudCluster has an excellent agreement with the ground truth. CloudCluster works well for projects at different scales, projects ranging in size from 500 VMs to over 10,000 VMs. CloudCluster can also handle projects with varying functional and geographical diversity. Project A, B, E, and F runs more than 20 different kinds of software and span across a number of zones across the globe. Project G and H contains 5 to 6 different types of functions and only scope within the North America. The homogeneity and completeness score shows that our result has an excellent agreement with the ground truth label. For all the projects, homogeneity is higher than 92%, and completeness is higher than 94%. This confirms our hypothesis that we can extract the function similarity from the traffic similarity. This agreement also motivates several interesting use cases of the functional structure. In the paper, we show that how cloud provider can use functional structure to answer several questions about customers' project. But before I describe this, I will describe an operationally important use case. This figure shows how a cloud provider can help customer visualize their project. In this visualization, the structure and the functional grouping are clearly visible. This can help the project operator to understand how well the deployed service match their intents. The functional structure from CloudCluster can be used to detect traffic shift and structural changes. This figure shows the functional structure of a cloud service. The red group in the region 1 is getting consistent traffic from external IP. We can see a traffic shift from a functional group in region 1 to another group in region 2. By analyzing this with other measurement systems, we were able to correlate it with appearing router failure. This is another case study focused on structural changes in the cloud project. The VMs of the purple cluster resides in the zone 1. Our CloudCluster-based detector found a sequence of structural changes in this project. VMs from the previously purple cluster are stopped, and a number of VMs get spawned in zone 2. CloudCluster signaled that these new VMs are belonging to the same functional group, which is a blue node in the graph. It turns out that this is a VM migration process caused by the scheduler-driven eviction. VM of this project from zone 1 are evicted and migrated to zone 2. In our paper, we discuss a more detailed evaluation of CloudCluster's ability to detect traffic shift or structural changes. We identified 25 instances of these anomalies, and CloudCluster was able to detect all of those. The functional structure extracted from CloudCluster can also be used to help manage cloud projects. We found that we can reduce total cost of one functional group by 40% by adding VMs to reduce inter-region traffic. In several projects, up to 1% of VMs in a group are provisioned differently from the rest, and up to 7% are labeled differently from the rest of the group. In conclusion, we found that cloud monitoring is hard, and providers always try to have new ways to deliver their insight to their customer to help them to manage their services. One way that cloud providers can do is to find the functional structure by analyzing the traffic pattern. Our experiment shows that the functional structure are having a strong agreement with the ground truth. We also show that how the functional structure can be provided to provide useful information to the customer. Thanks for listening. I'm happy to take questions.